Hello everyone, it's Shannon here for Waffle Flower Crafts. In this video we are going to create this very pretty sunflower card using the new layered sunflower set. We're also going to add some details using Copic markers. This is Waffle Flower's new layered sunflowers combo. It's a beautiful layering stamp set. It also has a matching die in the back. I have a large piece of white cardstock here. I'm using a larger piece, that way I can flip it around and stamp the flower twice just to make it a lot easier to create too. I'm going to start with the outline and I'm going to ink it up in Memento Tuxedo Black. So just a simple black here, keeping the first part pretty simple. I'll use a little bit untraditional colors later, but we're starting off pretty simple here. So I just went ahead and stamped the outline. Now I'm going to rotate my panel around and then I'll ink up the flowers and I'll stamp them again. Now that I finished stamping the outline, I'm going to move on to some of the layering stamps for this image. I'm going to start with the largest one, which is the one here that creates the petals or adds the color to the petals. It is marked number 1 on the stamp set. I just positioned the stamp, then picked it up with my MISTI. Now I'm going to ink it up with a yellow. This is Lemon Whip. This is a Pink Fresh Studio ink. I went ahead and stamped that grouping of flowers, then rotated my panel around, and I'm going to do the same for the other grouping, just ink it up with that beautiful Lemon Whip color. Now that I've finished this first layer, I'm going to move on to the next largest layers. That happens to be the center for the flowers, or the kind of the additional color for the flowers. The label for these are 2 and 3. I did turn my MISTI around so I could make the orientation of my stamped image the same as it is on the printed acetate for the stamp set. I found that using the acetate as a guide just to kind of help me know where to place these helped a lot, because all the layer stamps for this stamp set are kind of placed or arranged on this acetate near where they go in the image, so I found that very helpful. I'm now going to move on to the centers. These are 4 and 5, and I am going to just do this in a simple brown. The last layer I did use kind of an orange color. This is Gathered Twigs here. Again, I'm going to simply ink these up and stamp them. Now I didn't get these absolutely in the perfect position, but this stamp set is pretty forgiving. That's what's really fun about it. I'm not going to move on to the leaves. I'm pointing them out here. First was A, then I just pointed out K. Now moving on to L, and I'm also pointing where they go on that outline image. I just pointed out a very little stamp set with, or little layer, which is I, and then I finished up with G. So I'm not going to position all those leaf stamps. I've already arranged them here all on that first grouping of flowers. And here's where I'm going to get a little untraditional. I'm going to use some pinks for this. I started with Coral Reef, so a really nice light pink, and stamped it. Now I'm going to do a little partial inking just to add a little bit of shading. So this is a slightly darker pink, and I just inked up a little bit of each of those leaves and stamped it, and that just adds a little gradation, so it just adds a little bit of shadow and a little bit more interest. I'm just going to repeat that process for the other grouping, and now I'm going to move on to my next grouping of layering stamps. So I'm now doing the tiny flowers. I'm again pointing out the stamps and also where they go in the outline image. I've positioned all these tiny flowers here on my first image, and then I picked them up. I'm going to ink these up in an orange and then stamp them. After I stamp them in this orange, I've grabbed a darker orange and I'm going to partial ink these just like I did with the leaves. Just kind of angle my ink pad just so a small portion of the ink pad touches the stamp, and I just get a little bit of that darker shade on those stamps. And again, that just creates a little gradation, adds a little bit interest. I repeated that for the other grouping, and now I'm moving on to my last little section of flowers. This is the tiniest little flowers, kind of like almost like berries here. And once more, I'm pointing out the stamps and where they go in that outline image. I've now positioned all of these little berry stamps, picking them up with my MISTI, and I'm going to ink these up in a light orange. You could have combined the small flowers, all of them. I divided them up into 2 groups. You could definitely combine them and do this all in one step instead of 2. So I just finished stamping the last layers, And now my images are done. So now I'm going to move on to adding some Copic details. I'm going to start by coloring the centers of the flowers a little bit darker. Then I've grabbed a darker brown and I'm just adding some dots, just kind of filling in a little bit more, adding a little bit more interest. The Copic details that we're adding today are just very simple and they're just going to kind of personalize your image. I went ahead and grabbed a light yellow to kind of color in the white open space, just to fill it in and give it a different look. And I did the same, grabbed a light pink to fill in that kind of white open space on the leaves. And here are my finished colored images that I've also die cut out with the matching die. Waffle Flower also released these 2 new paper pads in their October release. These are the Caprice Dots and the Caprice Lines. These are also the half papers, so each sheet can be divided in half to create 2 A2 panels that are a little bit different from each other, which is really awesome. I just love these paper pads. So I'm going to use this orange lines or orange striped sheet here from the half lines Caprice paper pad, and I'm going to, or I went ahead and trimmed the panel down, and now I'm going to stamp my sentiment. This sentiment is from the Essential Sentiments combo. I'm going to ink it up with VersaFine Onyx Black ink and just stamp it in the center of my panel. Now I'm going to place my flowers, use a couple pieces of tape to kind of hold them in where I want them, and then I will grab my scissors and just trim off any of the overhang at the top and the bottom of my panel. And that will make sure that this card, when it's all done, will obviously fit into an A2 envelope. Now I'm going to remove the tape, and I'm almost done with this card. Then I'm just going to add some foam adhesive to the back side of my flowers to give them a little bit of dimension. But before I add them to my panel, I am going to adhere my panel to an A2 top folding white card base made from 110-pound white cardstock. Once I stuck that down, I then just removed the backing on my foam adhesive and stuck these flowers down, and that will actually complete the card. And I'll hold my card up to the camera so you can get a good look at these beautiful sunflowers. I love layering stamp sets. I think they are so fun. This is a really beautiful one. I love the loose kind of gestural look of it. And I think it was really fun to kind of personalize it a little bit by adding some Copic details. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. If you'd like any more information on the products I use, please head over to Waffle Flower, and you can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook for more creative ideas. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.